let me look up what the definition of an immigrant is. And I started in the Immigration and Nationality Act. And for as long as I've been doing this, I've never looked up what the definition of an immigrant is. And they do have a definition of an immigrant, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because the definition of an immigrant in the Immigration Nationality Act is over 4,500 words. And I thought that was fascinating. And it's just a reflection of how intricate and complicated an immigration system is.
Hey, this is Chaz back again with another episode of Law Have Mercy. A friend of mine, Paul Woody Scott, he is the founder of the Scott Law Firm, and he has a big immigration law firm. He's got 10 lawyers. He does criminal defense, personal injury, immigration, all kinds of good stuff. And he came in this morning from Baton Rouge. He is a repeat, uh, I was almost said repeat client. He's a repeat guest, and he's into running and I think triathlons too.
Yep.
And he's a business owner. Obviously, he's into entrepreneurship, and we have a good time. And I'm super excited to talk about immigration law right now because it's such a hot topic with Trump coming in, and there's been so many changes. Um, I don't know if there's actual changes or just different policies. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to have some fun. So welcome to the podcast, Woody.
Chaz, man, thanks for inviting me back. I'm super happy to be here. I'm happy to talk to your people on the podcast. I thought you were going to say I was a repeat offender, but I
It
guess,
almost slipped.
yeah, I guess I'm one of those too. But yeah, like you said, I got a law firm in Baton Rouge. It's headquartered in Baton Rouge. We also have an office in Lake Charles. We have a remote attorney in New York. We're 10 attorneys. We started our firm in 2010. The majority of what we do is immigration law. We also do criminal defense and personal injury, but that usually has to do with helping a non-citizen in court. Everything we do kind of centers around immigration law. I'm pumped to be here. I know when we talked before, one of the reasons you wanted me to come on was because I think the obvious elephant in the room is Trump being elected. One of his main platforms in running was changes he wanted to make in the immigration system, and so he's been, I don't know, president for a little bit over a month now, if I maybe even 2 months. But he's implemented some policies. He's tried to implement other policies. But the news and the rumor mill don't always reflect what's really happening, and so that's why I'm here and pumped to talk about what y'all want to hear and talk about. So
Yeah, I was wondering if, I mean, like, this is how perception and reality are different. I was wondering if you even have time to come here because I figured that you'd be on the phone or working the computer 24/7 since Trump's policies. And I don't know if it's if and maybe we can go into that, but I would imagine that some of the work that you were doing maybe got paused, or you dealing with clients who are super paranoid.
yeah.
Tell me about how things have changed since he's been in office.
Yeah, I mean, great question, and actually, it's the reason why I wanted to come here because what we saw after Trump got elected was an immediate announcement of executive orders, policy changes, and what that caused is for the phone calls to double. I mean, they doubled in 1 week. Now, that as a business owner, that's good. But as an attorney, that's not always good because what was happening is a lot of people just became scared overnight and they're asking questions that there's really no answer to right now. But one of the things that I know is you can't just because those fears or those questions are real fears, real questions, even if I don't have the answer to it. Because a lot of times the answer is, well, we're going to see how this plays out. So I have been talking to a lot of people in communities. Yesterday morning, I gave a talk at the Mexican consulate who invited me to come and talk. Last night, I went to kind of a bigger church in Baton Rouge. Just people in their congregation wanted to hear and ask questions to me, and I found that that's a good way to address the community without fielding every phone call, and having a conversation with one person at a time, and going to community events, going to things like this, because if people do have questions, I want to answer them.
Do you have any answers right now?
We do.
Okay.
We do, and some of them might be surprising. So, I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen so far is the perception of how many people have been detained, how many non-citizens have been detained since Trump came into office. I don't have today's exact numbers, but the most recent numbers I saw was since Trump has become president, the amount of people that they've detained and deported is significantly less than Biden did at this point. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was Biden was in the 50,000s at this point in his presidency, and Trump was in the 30,000. So I mean that's a pretty good difference. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to clients or potential clients or people that just say they're nervous, we have people that are US citizens that are married to a non-citizen, and they're working on getting status. But one of the things that I'm telling them is, the fear is real. I understand that. The question is a good question, but the data is not supporting the hype, for lack of a better word. And as a matter of fact, at first, if anybody's on Twitter, you can follow ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and they were tweeting how many people they detained each day. And I was following that, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's not that impressive. And once it was reported in USA Today that the amount of people detained it was significantly less than Biden, I stopped tweeting that. So they stopped tweeting their daily detentions. So now, if you follow ICE, what they do is they have like one person a day that they'll put on there. They arrest, and they'll put his long criminal history. But that's one person. I mean, if you arrest people, somebody's gonna have a criminal history in that. So again, it's more the perception is different than what the data suggests. Now, I will say the difference is under Biden and Obama, what they did is the reality is, Chaz, there are too many people in the United States to round everybody up and deport them. It's not possible. We don't have the money to do it. It's just not possible. So, under Biden and Obama, what they did was create a priority system, is what they called it. And what that means is anybody that they were going to detain had to have a certain criminal history or a previous deportation. So the person that was maybe a roofer driving to work who's been here for 10 years and has children here and has never been arrested, I don't want to say he was safe, but he was not a priority. They weren't just looking to get that person. So the people that were being detained and deported all had some criminal history. And so the difference now is, although there's been less people detained, is that there is no priority system. So what we're seeing is, of the people that are being detained, because we get calls every day with this,
Of people being detained?
or their family members that every day. A big part of what we do is deportation defense. Um, what we're seeing is that roofer that I'm mentioning might be the one that got detained. So we're seeing immigration detention centers fill up with people that are not criminals, with people that don't have criminal history. So I guess my thought on that is that everybody wants a safe United States. I have a family, you have a family, we all want our families to be safe. But when I see that the rhetoric is to make America safe, but I also see that a detention center is being filled up with people that have no criminal history, I'm not sure how much safer we're making the country. So that's just my thought. Nobody's asked me that, including you didn't even ask me that. I'm just kind of went on a tangent on that. But those are the policy changes that I'm seeing is that there's no priority, so everybody's a priority.
There's less discretion
There's
on getting bad
exactly,
guys out. It's more
exactly.
of a just a roundup.
Just a roundup.
But the roundup is actually less, from the data that you've seen, the roundup is actually less than previous presidencies.
That's correct. Yeah. So when I talk to people that are calling and saying they're scared, or when I go to events to talk to them, I'm trying to give them hard data and just say, the data is not reflecting what the rhetoric is saying is happening. Now, could that change? Yeah. But as of right now, that's what's going on.
You had kids not showing up to school.
Yeah, so that we had kids not showing up to school, and that's interesting. We had kids not showing up to school. We represent a lot of contractors. Contractors are people, most of them U.S. citizens that work hard. I mean, I'm sure you've represented or know a contractor. That's hard work. I had contractors calling me saying they couldn't get workers to show up to work. One of the policy
So you
changes.
got homes that were being built where people weren't showing up to work.
Correct. So that puts the contractor behind. That puts a person out of their home. That delays everything. That just can't be the effect that we want.
But man, like you said, the U.S. is so vast.
Yeah.
And if you've traveled around the U.S., you know, man, Texas is far away. West Texas is super, and that's just the neighboring states.
Right.
Only 30,000 people. That's not a lot of people.
It's
They're
not.
not going to look at a house in Broussard or Youngsville or Denham Springs to go and round up every single, non-U.S. citizen.
Well, that's what the rhetoric says, but the reality is not that.
Right.
And so and it's not even possible if they wanted to. But we are seeing it in Baton Rouge, probably less so than some of the other cities like Baltimore. I do know in one instance that ICE did show up to a school in New Orleans, and kids are kids, and school needs to be a safe place for any kid. Um, that's another policy that was rescinded. Typically, all presidents, Republican, Democrat, previously, law enforcement, ICE particularly, was not to show up unless there's an extenuating circumstances to schools. I think for obvious reasons. I think kids should not be subjected to that in their school. Courts, for obvious reasons. If people are afraid they're going to be arrested for going to take care of their business in courts, what are people going to do? They're not going to go to court. Churches and hospitals. And so those policies have been rescinded. So the idea is they can go anywhere. I have not seen it where they're mass going into these places. I do know of one instance in New Orleans where they did go into a school, and one instance in Baltimore where they went into a court. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see
And
what
and
happens.
they'll put kids in custody.
Yeah, yeah, they're
Oh,
processing them. Yeah, and I think some of that, unfortunately, is to draw the parents out. If a kid is in trouble, any parent, what are they going to do? They're going to go help that kid, their child. So um, I think the policy is that if you arrest a parent, deport a parent, the child may remain behind, maybe with the other parent. If you get the kid, the parents are going to come, and so it's sad. I don't like that, but I think that's the point of the policy.
you talked about just rounding up people, but what about from the administrative side of cases that you are currently working on trying to legalize some of your clients? Have those processes, and correct me if I'm ever wrong in the terminology, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't do this type of law, but have those administrative procedures been stalled, suspended, cases that are pending?
So yeah, so remember, Trump was president before. I was an attorney when Trump was president. He's only been in, a little over a month. Here's what we saw before, and here's what I think will happen because I haven't seen it necessarily trickle down into those a little bit. There are examples of somebody that applies for a green card, say, somebody that applies for a green card. If you
Explain. Can you explain what a green card is?
Yeah, so interestingly, the word green card does not exist anywhere in the law. It is called, the technical term is lawful permanent resident. But through history and just media and movies and all that, we've all learned what a green card is. It is a card and it is green. And when somebody has a green card or they're a lawful permanent resident, they have every right of a US citizen except voting. And typically, after someone has a green card for 5 years, they can apply for US citizenship. Um, so to get a green card is a big deal. It's a big step. Um, if somebody if somebody applies for a green card, maybe through marriage to a US citizen, maybe their company has petitioned for them. If enough evidence was supported in the package, they would not require an interview. They wouldn't have to go to an interview if enough evidence was there. If the officer can approve it just by looking at the evidence supported. So one of the policy changes now is that everybody applying for a green card has to do an interview, even if it's obvious this person's eligible. So what I see happening with that is all processes are going to slow down because it's going to require immigration adjudication officers to do much more work.
And
Um,
didn't you tell me last time you were here that the way to fix illegal immigration is to make legal immigration easier?
yeah, everybody says make America great again. I say make immigration viable again. Because the reason why anybody comes here illegally is because it is just not possible for them to come here legally. The fallacy of somebody saying like I just don't want to do it the right way. That's just not true. I was born in Honduras, but I'm a lucky person because when I was born in Honduras, my parents were US citizens and so I was born a US citizen. But I know that if you're born in Honduras, in certain parts of Honduras, if you're born poor in Honduras, the chances of you being able to come to the United States is is almost nil. It's almost impossible. So if you want to fix the illegal immigration problem, make it to where you know how many contractors tell me they can't find enough people to work? You know how many concrete people tell me they can't get enough people to work? You like crawfish?
I do.
Every crawfish farmer in Lake Charles hires H-2A workers, that's seasonal workers that come in. You know why? They can't get people here to do those kind of jobs.
Bad jobs.
There is the demand for jobs that businesses need. There are people that want to come here to serve those jobs. It is not viable for them to come here legally. If you want to stop illegal immigration almost overnight, make a program that they could come temporarily, work, pay into Social Security, pay all that, go back overnight. Overnight, illegal immigration would come to a trickle. Um, just about every industry you can think of needs workers, and they're
I think about right here. Construction, obviously.
construction.
Cane farming, that is not exactly a pleasant job. Crawfish farming, rice farming, right?
Rice farm, cane farm, crawfish. We have a lot of like the farmers are our clients to get H-2A
Yeah.
workers, H-2B workers. Any restaurant relies on immigrant labor. Like you said, contractors. I mean, the list goes on. You know,
And you represent a lot of the business owners
I do.
who
Yeah,
are trying to obtain these visas and employees.
that's correct.
And if they found suitable labor here, they wouldn't come and pay you money to go hire people,
I'd
right?
be out of business, but that's okay, because that's okay because I think that would be better just for the society in general.
Let me ask you a question. I'm I'm not asking you to play devil's advocate, but let's assume the rhetoric of the open borders in the previous administration is accurate, right?
Mhm.
They didn't enforce the borders. The security wasn't there. The manpower wasn't there. What would be the incentive to allow open borders?
I don't think anybody wants open borders. I don't think Biden wants open borders.
It's not to flood and get illegal voters and
Nobody wants open borders. It goes back to people's core values. Everybody, I don't care who you are, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, people want safety. People have families, and so I don't think the issue of I don't think anybody wants an open border. I think some people want there to be more viable immigration, and I think some people want there to be a stronger security on the border, and I think we both want that. I'm an immigration attorney. I want there to be a safe border. I want there to be a secure border. I don't want bad people coming in here. But I also see a lot of needs for people to come in here. The birth rate in the United States is declining substantially. There's an easy fix to that. and that's importing people through
Yeah.
the process of immigration.
Yeah, I think it's almost like an economist, an economics argument
Mhm.
that what I've heard, the 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 Soros, and get into that, right? The deep state. The reason that people would want open borders is to hedge against inflation, right? Because you get cheaper labor is one. Flood certain jurisdictions with liberal type voters to keep those people into power, and the birth rate issue, right? Because in order for an economy to sustain, you have to have a positive birth rate. You have to
Correct.
be replacing more people than are dying. And I know in Europe that was an issue as well, right?
Yeah. Europe,
Uh,
China, you know.
China.
Yeah.
And so, do you buy into any of that stuff?
The only one that I buy into is the birth rate. When people come into the United States, they cannot vote, and the issue of voter fraud is almost a non-issue, despite what is said. I mean, statistically, I mean, William Barr, the previous Attorney General, looked into it when Trump lost and just said, There's nothing to go after," because if wherever there was voter fraud, it was so minuscule that it has no effect on an election.
Isn't it too also, it's kind of it would be a bad move if it's just for voting purposes because aren't most Hispanics
Yeah.
conservative by nature?
Yeah, I think, if you go through their values and all that, I would actually say that most Hispanics would associate more with the Republican Party.
And they voted more Trump this
They
past
voted
election, right?
Yeah, they did, and, I've had a lot of clients, USC United States citizen clients that are Hispanic that tell me they voted for Trump, and it was actually, I was on the phone with one yesterday who said just on a particularly, I think maybe some of the issues of abortion or things like that, they just aligned more with him on that, and that was a very important issue to them. So that's why they voted for him. So yeah, you are right. I think if you took a Hispanic group, their core values would probably associate more with the Republican Party, but because historically they felt excluded by the Republican Party, they've leaned left. Now it seems like they're going back right. So
Have you noticed a trend of a certain country, whether it be Central America, South America, immigrating more to America in the past? And has that changed in your career? Are you seeing more people from El Salvador or certain
yeah.
areas than others?
So I'd say the steady is Honduras and El Salvador. Mexico, I would say third. Mexico actually has a pretty decent economy, especially compared to Honduras and El Salvador.
Kevin and I talk about this all the time. He's Mexican,
Yeah.
so he's he's like, man, oh, the he says, man, we got a bad rap,
Yeah.
right? He's like, everybody thinks it's Mexicans across the board. Mexico's great,
Yeah.
right? And most of the people that you see, the Mexicans, quote unquote, that you see here are working restaurants, own the restaurants by
Right.
now. They've been here for 2 or 3 generations now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a restaurant that's near my office. It's a great success story, and he's Mexican, and he told me he, in Mexico, he owned this little pizza shop, and he was delivering pizza on a little motorcycle. I mean, now he owns 6 restaurants and like big restaurants throughout South Louisiana, and so it's awesome to see those kind of success stories. But yeah, I mean, compared to, I mean, every country's got its issues, but compared to Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico is doing pretty good. And I think
Yeah.
that's probably why they're number three. I'll tell you who we never get. I mean, I could probably count on one hand Panama and Costa Rica. We,
Really?
we just do not.
No, we want to go to Costa Rica. We don't want Costa Ricans don't want to
Well,
come here.
I'll tell you what, yeah, I went to Costa Rica last year, and I'll tell you what, I went there, I was like, I see why now.
Yeah,
But then we see things
that's
like
on my list. Maybe this summer I want to go to Costa Rica.
get it done, man. It was
That's-
wonderful.
yeah,
But you do see things that happen. I'm sure y'all have seen things in the news like Venezuela is in turmoil. At one point, Venezuela didn't even know who their president was. There was 2 people claiming to be the president.
hyperinflation too.
Hyperinflation. Cuba is always, and things go up and down with Cuba. We had a Haitian influx. I mean, the it was like the president of Haiti got taken out by gangs. So when you see those kind of moments of upheaval in countries, you almost always see some sort of influx from there. Bangladesh, we've had things where all of a sudden we're just getting floods from Bangladesh. I have to go look up what's going on in Bangladesh right now. So it's kind of cool what I do because I get to learn about what's going on throughout the world. Ukraine and Russia, we all know there's some issues going on with Ukraine and Russia. There was an influx of
I
people.
hadn't heard that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's influx of people coming from Ukraine, Russia, and the reason you probably haven't heard that is because
I was kidding.
are you talking about? I thought you
The
meant
Zelensky
oh,
meeting in the Oval
you're
Office.
talking about you haven't heard about the war. I thought you meant the influx. Yeah, there's something going on. You might want to look it up.
Yeah, yeah. My question too is, a lot of people talk. Well, I think during the Trump presidency, or at least campaign, the Chinese were coming in from the southern border. Have you seen that?
I have, but not to anything that I would say that's notable. I mean, at any given day, you're going to have people of all different nationalities. Afghanistan was another one when Taliban took over again. I don't see that, and I wouldn't say that's a regular occurrence that I see. I
But
mean,
that's true. Like what is the term? Like when you're fleeing the war zone, is that a migrant?
refugee.
Refugee. Okay.
Hmm.
There's refugee types of visas, right?
Right.
That you can apply for.
Right, and then there's also something called TPS, temporary protected status, which is more for like I don't know if you remember when Haiti, this is probably like 12 years ago, had a very big earthquake. I mean, they were rocked. So people that were in the United States, Haitians, like people going to school, universities, tourist visas, they had nowhere to go back to. They were issued temporary protected status. So
Speaking of Haitians, can you talk about eating dogs and cats?
I can't because my clients have said that's just not true, So I don't know anything about it, and apparently none of my Haitian clients do either. So
What I mean, other than whether it's that actually happened or not, somebody I think the thing was that somebody killed a duck or something and defeathered it and cooked it or something. One of the ducks in the pond. I think that was another one of the things that some of the people in Ohio were talking about. How did this happen? Were there communities set up? Let's say that whether it happened or not, there was a strong population of Haitians or some type of culture, right? How are areas set up around the country with huge um, eh, populations of folks like this?
yeah, no, it's interesting. And I mentioned last time I was on the show that the second largest city in Honduras is Kenner, Louisiana.
Yes.
And that is true, and everybody in Honduras knows that. Everybody in Kenner knows that. And so it's obviously a phenomena, right? And I think about even myself, like how did I say I grew up in New Orleans, but actually I grew up in Kenner and I was born in Honduras. So it's even true for me, but I'm not even sure exactly how that happened, except that when my mom left Honduras, she had some family here. And so I think that if you're going somewhere, you're looking for some sort of familiarity. And even if it's that third cousin that I once met at my quinceañera, you know, many years ago, it's like, well, at least I know somebody,
Yeah.
and I think it must just grow from there.
Okay, so it's not a government
No,
a
no, no.
force thing or a sanctuary city or whatever. But I do want to talk about sanctuary cities.
Mhm.
But I mean, think about the Cajun population in
Yeah,
Louisiana, right? So you originally had Nova Scotians that came down here, but then a lot of the people that are here that are quote unquote Cajun actually came from France
right.
after.
Yeah,
So they needed to come to America. There was already a French population here.
yeah,
And the same thing I think happened with the Lebanese here. There's a big Lebanese
yeah.
population
Huge. Yeah. The
in Lafayette.
Catholic Lebanese. Yeah,
And I think it came from the Catholicism and it
yeah.
came from the French,
Hmm.
French Lebanon. There was already French speakers here. And so that's how it came. So once you establish a community, it's more open to others within that community,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think you're 100% right. I think people are just looking for something familiar. Anybody that's been to another country, although it's exciting, sometimes you do gravitate a little bit to what you're used to, because that's the comfort.
But
So,
Ohio's way the hell up there.
it all starts with, one business. We said all these industries need migrant workers. One person went, people followed. I don't think proximity necessarily has that much to do with it. I mean, as you mentioned, the
Still a bus ride away, I guess, or a train ride away.
well, even before buses and trains, the Cajuns, man, they took a long trip.
It took a long
Took a
trip.
long trip, and it was a dangerous trip. And look at where they ended up.
Are there is that a thing, sanctuary cities?
Yeah, I think. Well, it's one of those things. There's no official sanctuary city. It's a term that's been given to certain cities, and it goes back to this program called 287G, which allows some local law enforcement to do some enforcement of immigration law. There has been certain sheriffs throughout the country that just don't want to comply with that. And there's good reason not to. Many times because the sheriff ends up footing the bill for holding uh, maybe somebody that's accused of being undocumented
Holding it in their
in their own
local
local.
jail,
Correct.
which the sheriff is in charge of the local jail, and so they don't wanna spend all the money
It costs money.
housing people,
Exactly.
and then you don't have space to put the guys that you're arresting on the streets of crimes.
That's exactly it. They don't get paid that much to do it. A lot of sheriffs are working on a pretty slim budget. So I think that's where sanctuary cities come from, is that some places don't want to comply with that. There's other police. I mean, I was talking with a police officer last night and said a lot of police officers don't want to be the immigrant enforcement, because if there's a large immigration population, the police need community confidence. Once they lose that confidence, nobody works with the police. They can't investigate things,
No information.
no information. So it's not necessarily always in their interest, especially if your city or jurisdiction has a large immigration population, to be the immigrant enforcer. Police have a different perspective and they have a different motive than, immigration officers. Police rely heavily, heavily on um, community involvement.
You were talking I wanna touch on this earlier when you were talking about the lack of discretion on the roundup. So you have probably people who have been here for 10, 15 years who are looked at no differently than someone who's been here for 6 months and maybe even have committed crimes. And so are you getting calls on people who they felt safe, they've been here, they look at themselves as a citizen,
Mhm.
but just never got their paperwork in order? Are those people calling you now to say, okay, I need to get my documents?
Yes, and remember, a lot of people just won't be able to. There's just nothing available for them. We are getting a lot of people too. The person that you just mentioned, that you know they've just been putting it off, and they've been putting it off because it costs money. We charge immigration charges. There's just funds involved with this. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are hiring us, like green card holders that need to apply for citizenship. It's just one of those things, like, well, I got my green card, I'm going to apply, but you do have a couple $1,000s to pay the lawyer right now, to pay immigration. And now they're like, yeah, let me prioritize that. Or so we're seeing a lot of that, not necessarily
That's human nature, right?
human nature. Yeah. I mean,
We all put off that we don't go replace that AC till we need it, right?
that's exactly it. And like, I'll tell you, around December, we kind of, I don't want to say shut down, but our call volume drops because nobody wants to go pay their lawyer in December. They got kids, they got to buy, gifts for their kids and things like that. So we're seeing a lot of that, though, where they're prioritizing that.
I heard something about a gold card.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
Okay, so Trump wants to put in some type of gold card where you can pay $5 million
Hmm.
and move your business to America.
I don't even know if it requires that you move your business to America, because so there's already something called an EB-1, which is employment based. It's an investor visa where somebody can pay 500,000 or a million, not necessarily like write the check, invest, maybe get a loan, invest in Lafayette, and have a business plan to employ a certain amount of US citizens over the next few years. Okay. That already exists. The gold card is a proposal that somebody can just buy it, pay the government $5 million. So It's an interesting concept in that it will obviously be income for the United States.
You need to get some of those clients.
Yeah, if y'all are look, if y'all are watching, give me no. Um,
If you could pay the 5 million gold car, you could pay a nice attorney fee.
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
There
Woody's gonna come in his helicopter next time.
yeah. I'll give everybody a ride. But there's no as he's kind of discussing it right now, there's no requirement that the person create jobs. So it's an interesting concept. I mean, I do see benefits to it. I don't know how many people are gonna be able to do it, but if they are watching, then give me a call. So
Last time we talked, we had a clip that actually went pretty viral when we were talking about 90 Day Fiance.
mhm.
And so, are you still, do you get any calls for people who are looking, they met someone online and they want to make them an American citizen?
It's pretty common actually. It used to be when I started doing this that people are a little embarrassed, like, "So how'd y'all meet?" You gotta prove they have a good faith relationship. And like, "Oh, well, we met on," you know. Now it's so common that people are not embarrassed about it. It's just the reality of this world. There's lonely people and people are finding a way to connect. And when you're online, there's no borders. And so, yeah, it's common. People will meet somebody, Philippines or Central South America, and they go down and they fall in love, and they got to figure out how to get them here. And so they come to me, and I help get them here. The 90 Day Fiance. It's a cool show, but it's not particularly accurate. But that does happen, and that's happening more and more.
What are the steps they need to take?
So if you're doing a fiance visa, first thing is you have to show that you have a good faith relationship. So if someone were to just meet somebody today and just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna bring them here. You can't do that. Immigration's always looking for, trafficking or things like that. It has to be a good faith relationship. You have to prove it's a good faith relationship. You have to prove that you've met in person within the last 2 years. You have to prove that you both have the legal ability to marry. So if there was previous marriages, they had to have been divorced or maybe a widower situation. And then they have to prove that they have the intent to marry within 90 days of entry. That's where the show kind of has fun, but it's not completely accurate. The show kind of makes it look like it's a 90-day trial period. That's not the case. You have to sign something under oath saying, when my fiance gets here, we intend to get married and have the ability to get married within 90 days. So those are the steps, kind of, in general.
They usually portray the Americans as the losers, and then the foreigners as the hot ones, right?
Yeah.
Because America is just such a great place, and so you can be a loser and then meet this bombshell and bring her over because she wants American citizenship, and everybody knows she's going to dump him immediately after
Yeah.
she gets married. She gets her status, right?
That's the passport bros. I don't know if you've heard of that, where people
No.
there's like a phenomenon right now called passport bros, where people go, some loser American goes to like Colombia or somewhere where there's like known to be hot girls, and like, well, I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm gonna get all these girls. So yeah, it's the passport bro phenomena. The passport gets you this bombshell. So I don't know if that's totally true, but it's fun to talk about.
Okay, I'm gonna look up hashtag passport bros.
Look it up. It's a thing. It's a thing now.
And so, at what point in the 90 Day Fiance would you recommend hiring a lawyer to
You,
facilitate the process?
that point comes when the person has decided, you know what, we want to get married. And then I'll talk with the person. Is it worth doing this fiance visa, or should you get married in that person's country? And then you're doing a spousal, visa, and it's kind of similar, a few differences. But when the person comes to me and says, I met this person. We want to get married. And that's a definitive. That's when you need to talk to me, because I do have people sometimes comes like, I've met this person and we're thinking about maybe getting married, and it's just this very tangential relationship. It's like, you know what? That's what you need to work on first. Either get married or decide you'll get married. That's when I could come into play.
What I learned last time when we talked, I thought that people had free range, can travel to the US just like we can travel pretty much anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And you shot that down. You said, no,
Yeah.
actually, it's very hard to come to the US. So I'd imagine that in these fiance situations, you had to meet within meet in person within 2 years, most of the time that involves an American flying to whatever country that person is from
Correct. Yeah.
versus them come here, right?
Yeah, most of the time it is the American has gone there. Not always. I can think of one client right now where they've flown back and forth, but it does usually require that it is usually that the case that the U.S. goes to. I'm sorry, the U.S. citizen goes to another country, and that's where the passport bros kind of comes from. Is like if you got this U.S. passport, it's powerful. You can travel almost anywhere very easily. That's not every passport's like that. So the passport bro can go kind of wherever, and he's kind of and that's one of the privileges of being a U.S. citizen, being able to bring a loved one here to the U.S. So
Passport bros.
yeah.
Before we wrap up, you and I share a passion of endurance sports.
Hmm.
You just ran Louisiana Marathon.
Yep.
Kevin and I actually did the half because
Nice.
I don't know if I told you I did New York this past November, and I did this crazy race in Georgia, a full marathon off road. Where do you see your next race? What's your next passion? Tell me about it.
Well, I'll tell you one of the most proud things I did this past year was I did a full Ironman, which is a 2.1 2 point about a little over 2 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a full marathon, 26.2 miles. It took me 13 and change hours to do it. So me and a group of friends decided to do that. It was in the Woodlands, Texas.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, it was a great experience and such a good experience. I ended up getting an Ironman tattoo,
Oh,
So
great. You
um,
still have your van?
yeah, I got the Sprinter van.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So endurance sports translates into life. When you have hard things, everybody has hard things that they have to do, whether it's an emotional thing, a mental thing, or everything. You can always draw on that. It's like I can do hard things.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you have kind of the same thoughts, but marathons or triathlons, they're more mental than physical because you do hit that breaking point, and then when you just kind of believe I can do it, you can do it.
It's such a wonderful thing, man. I run probably 2 or 3 marathons a year. I get people involved. You wouldn't believe how many people reach out to me on social media
Yeah,
that I've inspired them to run,
that's awesome,
which is
man.
crazy. It kinda gives me goosebumps right now, but where it comes from, I've been running for a couple years now. I've had many people ask me to do the Ironman. The swimming scares the shit out of me, and the biking is just this whole other animal, right? And I could go bike on my Peloton. I'm happy. I'm scared to get on public highways
Yeah,
to ride a bike. I've represented people
yeah,
who've been seriously injured in bike rides. So it's just one of my things. Maybe it's just a convenient excuse. But that being said, I just delivered a speech to a bunch of kids, and what I said is, I challenge you all to do hard
yeah,
things, and that's why I run.
yep,
And that's why I take cold showers or go in a cold plunge
yep,
because exactly what you said it perfect. If you can condition yourself to do hard things, self imposed, when the 50 hard things that you and I deal with every single day as business owners and lawyers confront you, you can meet it with a smile on your face
yep.
because you can't do to me what I haven't done to myself.
That's right.
That's
That's right.
cool, man. Well, congratulations on that. And
I got one more thing if
go
you don't
ahead.
mind.
Sure.
It's just you invited me to talk about immigration. I won't take a lot of your time, but I gave a talk to a bunch of attorneys this past year, and they wanted me to talk to non-immigration lawyers about immigration. And so when I was preparing for that, I one of the things I thought I was like, you know what? Let me look up what the definition of an immigrant is. And I started in the Immigration and Nationality Act, and for as long as I've been doing this, I've never looked up what the definition of an immigrant is. And they do have a definition of an immigrant, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because the definition of an immigrant in the Immigration Nationality Act is over 4,500 words. And I thought that was fascinating. And it's just a reflection of how intricate and complicated an immigration system is. And I think, as a society, we want to create this box like this is just immigration and this is how it should fit. But when you're talking about people, different cultures of people, people that might be fleeing a Taliban or something like that, everybody's circumstance, people that are falling in love, businesses, business needs, it just the complexity starts growing and growing and growing. And so I think the definition of immigration or an immigrant, the definition of an immigrant being over 4,500 words is just a reflection of the complexity of immigration law. And I just found that to be very fascinating.
That is, man. And you do such a great job of humanizing immigrant. And I've done criminal defense, you do criminal defense, and somebody would say, "How could you ever defend someone accused of a crime?" And you got to say, "Well, wait a second. This is a very complex thing.
Yeah.
You don't know their socioeconomic background. You don't know. You got to understand what the Constitution means with respect to people's rights,
Yeah.
which protecting constitutional rights is even more important than allowing a criminal to go free
Yeah.
because those constitutional rights apply to all of us. So it's a very, very, very complex matter. And that's why if there's haters, you're so worried about me getting the haters because we're talking about immigration. It's a discussion that needs to be had
Yeah. Well, I
because we
appreciate that.
because we have to understand the complexities, and people don't have to agree with it,
Yeah.
but they have to at least consider it.
That's it.
As lawyers and as strong members of the community, like we both are, we have to talk about the nuance and the deeper meaning of people and family,
Yeah.
right? And so thank you for this discussion. Where can people find you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for letting me have this talk. And the best way to contact me is to text me 225 400 9976. You can get us on our website, pwscottlaw.com. And then there's chat on there, but best way is a text 225 400 9976.
Brave man giving out the texting. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Chaz.
All right.